she feels angry, she feels betrayed.
Sure.
She's not tamping those down.
Yeah.
She feels them. It's necessary, it's healthy to feel those emotions, but she doesn't dwell in them. Having felt them, she's like, okay, now I have to go forward. Now I have to see what is the best thing I can do. And that was another big lesson I learned from
Right.
Sita. In order to show Sita in her amazing human glory, I don't need to put down Ram.
Sure.
That's not necessary.
Do you hope that there will be a day where girls are also told, may you be like Draupadi?
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
And Draupadi is a tougher nut to crack. It's going to take a lot of change before then people are told, may you be like Draupadi. For me, as I was writing it, Urmila was really important.
Also highly
And she's
neglected.
also highly neglected. I mean, think about that. At least Sita gets to go with Ram. Urmila, recently married, at the same time as Sita, Lakshman tells her, no, you're not coming. And she doesn't get to go. So the other day, someone was asking me, has this book changed you? So I said, yeah, like here in the US, we often have people say, or we see these stickers at the backs of cars,
Right.
what would Jesus do? I often now ask myself, what would Sita do?
You know, there's a line in the book that struck to me where Sita says, I think this is before her marriage, where she says, I had decided that I would not let King Dashrath dictate my life.
Yes.
Indirectly, do you think that kind of happens or not? Or does she stay true to that point? Or what is, I was just curious on your views on that line.
Yeah. Well, I was very interested in all the palace intrigue.
Right.
So I just imagined here is Sita, fairly young woman, and she's lived in a palace where things are very clear cut.
Right.
There's Janak, there's her mother, there's no other wives, nothing, and she's really brought up very free.
Yeah.
And to be a free thinker as well. And now she's in this Ayodhya palace full of intrigue. And not only the three main wives, but lots of sub-wives, and they're all vying for the king's attention. So that, and I think there are some funny parts in the book, so that he has his own mahal, and he wants peace and quiet.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
He'll want to be
And
with
which wife does he start eating dinner with and all those things?
Yes,
Yeah.
so there's this big, it's like a big production. Like, who will the king choose to have dinner with?
Right.
Where will he spend the night? So Sita, once she figures that out,
Yeah.
she has a lot of emotional intelligence.
Sure.
So she realizes that in order to, and Kaushalya is not the favorite wife.
Right.
And Kaushalya is very sad about that. So Sita decides, I'm going to do something about it.
Yes.
So then she uses her emotional intelligence to kind of begin to change Dashrath's mind. So I think she's very much I wouldn't say in control, but certainly she's an agent. She has agency in all of these things. Now, when the big decision is handed to her, again, she's not given any choice in the matter of discussing, well, how might this work out?
Right.
Otherwise, how could we maybe keep his promise but not have you go to the forest? So we don't know.
Yeah.
It's just handed to her. Ram has already said, I'm going to the forest.
Right.
So that's an example of what I'm talking about.
Right.
Many decisions are not in her hands. But she
makes
now
the
has
best of.
she now has the choice of staying in Ayodhya as Ram wants it to, and all the in-laws, everybody wants it to stay, or not.
Yeah.
And she goes against all of them to say, no, Ram is my husband, I love him, my place is beside him. And then, just as a little side note to him, you're going to go off and have all these adventures, and hey, I want to be fine, not without me.
Yeah.
And many women have said that reminds them of like when they left maybe India to come abroad with their husbands, that they really related to what Sita is saying.
Well, I think one of the most fascinating parts of the book were the scenes between Ram and Sita in the bedroom, for example. That's not an aspect of their relationship that we would see otherwise. And I think that made the separation all the more dramatic and tragic for me, because seeing sort of the dynamic they had with each other, and the fact that she wasn't sort of subservient, Swami kind of wife, I think gave it a lot of perspective in terms of what that separation really meant to both of them.
Yeah, I wanted to show that they had, really a very good relationship as husband and wife. They talked about things, they argued about things, the physical aspect of love was important to them. I wanted to bring all of that in because, I think when we look at the Ramayana, especially the Ramayana, because Lord Krishna, he has many sides to him, and we've all accepted those sides, right?
Right.
But with Lord Ram, it's always Maryada Purushottam, and I think that's not his only reality. Also, right? He is also, an avatar, a human being, and especially in Valmiki and all of the Ramayans, when he loses Sita, he is bereft. He weeps.
Right.
He weeps.
Right.
And so I wanted to show the kind of relationship that would lead him to do that.
Sure.
Right? Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. You were talking about Kaushalya a few minutes ago, and to me, the character that struck to me the most in the entire book was Shanta, because I had never heard of her before, to be very
Right.
honest.
Right.
And I have seen so many interpretations of Ramayana over the year, even modern adaptations. A film was made in which it drew upon the Ramayana, but it wasn't the Ramayana. There was a serial made that drew upon the Ramayana, but wasn't the Ramayana. The only similarities were there was a husband, wife, and 4 sons, and 4 bahus.
Right.
So what according to you is the reason for the neglect? It's not that these versions have neglected other female characters, but what is sort of the core reason of Shanta's neglect in our sort of core understanding and readings on the Ramayana that we've had?
Well, see, I think what happens is when people are thinking, let's say, this is just my understanding, that they're going to make a movie.
Yeah.
First of all, they're going to simplify the story because it is a huge story.
Right.
At least in a book, we have more option,
Sure.
right? But in a movie, the time is limited, whatever, space is limited, stage space is limited. So people have picked who they think are the most important characters.
Yeah.
And you're talking about Shanta. For me, as I was writing it, Urmila was really important.
Also highly
and
neglected.
She's also highly neglected.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
think about that. At least Sita gets to go with Ram. Urmila, recently married, at the same time as Sita, Lakshman tells her, no, you're not coming. And she doesn't get to go.
Right.
So I wanted, this book is also about all of these
Sure.
other characters. Mandodari, very little is spoken of Mandodari.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
but what a dramatic situation. Her husband brings this person
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
and he's obsessed with this woman, and she's torn.
Right.
And then she feels, oh my God, I think this is my daughter,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is also not in all the Ramayans, and
Right.
that is not a well
Yeah. No, that's also not
publicized
something
story,
I knew. Yeah.
right? That comes out of the Adbhut Ramayana.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to take these neglected aspects,
Right.
mostly dealing with women,
Right.
and weave them into the story
Right.
to just make it a much more complex story.
Right. A larger question, these epics, Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc., are ingrained in us as Indians from childhood. By the time we're adults, we sort of have them down in our heads with whatever interpretations are given to us. What do you think as a society we need to do to get our children to think differently from an early age? I'm not sure how many children would pick this up and read it.
Well, a lot of young people are reading it though, like high school age.
Right.
Our youngsters are interested in them.
Yeah.
They really love the fact that we have these great stories in our heritage.
Yeah.
But they have to be presented to them in a way that they find themselves being invited into the story,
Sure.
which is what I'm hoping I'm doing for readers of all ages in Forest of Enchantments and Palace of Illusions. They are very interested in the character of Draupadi, the character of Sita.
Right.
How do they relate? If they can relate to these characters.
Right.
And, so the other day someone was asking me, has this book changed you? So I said, yeah, like here in the US, we often have people say, or we see these stickers in the backs of cars,
Right.
what would Jesus do? I often now ask myself, what would
What's
Sita do? And I'm hoping that, that readers, young readers would sometimes think of that.
Right.
And that would change how they respond to things.
Yeah.
And then the book can become, the Ramayana itself can become a living part of our culture
Sure.
where it is affecting our moral decisions in positive ways.
Right. You said growing up, you would constantly get the blessing, may you be like Sita.
Yes.
Do you think, or do you hope that there will be a day where girls are also told, may you be like Draupadi? In certain ways?
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
And Draupadi is a tougher nut to crack. It's going to take a lot of change before the people are told, may you be like Draupadi.
Right.
So Draupadi's relationship to women young women particularly is already different. A lot of young women are like, I want to be like Draupadi.
Yeah.
The elders are saying, maybe not.
Right.
But they already want to be
But that's
like.
also because, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the elders misinterpret Sita as the meek, demure.
Absolutely.
Right.
When they say
So
be
that
like
blessing
Sita, is
doesn't mean the Sita.
not be like Sita here. But I'm hoping, having read this,
Right.
when the blessing comes, be like Sita, young women
Yeah.
will interpret that and say, yes,
Right.
I will be like Sita. I'll be like her. I'll be strong. I won't compromise, but I'll be dignified through all of that.
Right.
I'm not going to go around looking for revenge.
Sure.
That is just not in Sita's nature. And I think it took me the 10 years in between writing Palace of Illusions and
Yeah.
Forest of Enchantments to really appreciate what a great characteristic that is. When we decide, I'm going to stand up for my rights, but I don't need revenge. That is a great spiritual growth, I think.
Sure.
But that is a quiet resistance, so it's not as dramatic.
Right. I think one big discovery for me, and you mentioned this before in your interviews, is Sita being one of the world's first successful single mothers. What are the lessons we can draw from that today? As not just single mothers, maybe single fathers as well.
Parents.
Single parents. Yeah.
She's one of single parents. So, first of all, we have to see Sita is devastated.
Correct.
All right? So, that's the other thing, that sorrow is a part of our lives. We have to accept that sometimes events happen that we don't control. It is sorrowful. I am not necessarily in the wrong. In Sita's case, she's certainly not in the wrong. So when a situation breaks down, it's no point beyond a certain bit of human, feeling of the sorrow and allowing ourselves to feel the sorrow and allowing ourselves to feel the anger. She feels angry. She feels betrayed.
Sure.
She's not tamping those down.
Yeah.
She feels them. It's necessary. It's healthy to feel those emotions, but she doesn't dwell in them. Having felt them, she's like, okay, now I have to go forward. Now I have to see what is the best thing I can do. And that was another big lesson I learned from Sita. She doesn't waste time, wailing, cursing, this, that.
Right. It's sort of.
She's like, okay, let me focus whatever energies I have to do the best thing I can do. Who am I most responsible for and to? My babies. And I'm going to bring them up the best I can. Yeah. So she really focuses on that. And through the entire bringing up, she doesn't tell them about their father, who he is, but she never badmouths him.
Yeah.
She never does that. That is a great lesson for all of us who might find ourselves in the position of being a single parent or also in a marriage relationship where often we might be angry with the spouse.
Yeah.
But Sita never badmouths Ram. That is certainly something we can all learn.
Right. And I think the line that struck to me the most is when she is expecting them. She says, I will bring you up in a way to where you will never do to a woman what your father did to me. That to me was sort of, it just pricked me right here in terms of the newfound purpose in her life.
Yes, the newfound purpose.
Yeah.
And isn't that a wonderful thing for all parents who are bringing up children, regardless of gender?
Sure.
But especially, I think mothers have a special, not only a role, but a responsibility. Because a lot of what our young men and women learn are really conditioned into them in childhood.
Yeah.
So if we can give them positive role models, as Sita is doing, positive virtues to focus on, positive ways of relating to men and women, then when they grow up, they really will be. And truly, Love and Kush go on to become great kings. And we never hear that they ever did anything to not be completely fair to women. I think being brought up by their mother really did have a very positive aspect. And even at the end where Sita is saying no, in my book, but also in the original, Rama and Love and Kush are devastated. They're like, Mom, they want to go with her.
Sure.
And she says, no, your place is with your dad.
Yeah.
That is your new role and responsibility.
Right.
And with love, I leave you there.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people can
Can
say
do that? Yeah. Not very many. Yeah.
Yes. But she's in those things, she is, she's a model for us, because I see often in so many broken marriages, each spouse is saying bad things to the kids about the other spouse. it ruins the kids' lives. They're just torn in two.
Yeah.
And they never get over that.
Yeah. I think what I found most beautiful about the book was that I expected to pick it up, and like many other versions I've read of the Ramayana, to be a male bashing sort of narrative, and in the whole spirit of feminism turning into sort of all the men being bad and all the women being victims of patriarchal society. So I thought it was very refreshing to see different angles of men and women, and the fact that the relationships aren't as black and white as we think they are.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That was my project
Yeah.
in this, because it isn't simple.
Right.
And it isn't. And Sita would be the first to say that,
Yeah.
no, you can't say men are bad.
Right.
You can't say everybody has their reasons. Yes, some of the men in this book do bad things. Some of the women in this book do bad things. That is the human condition.
Yeah.
We have to recognize in each case which is the right thing for them to do.
Right.
And, and if they failed to do it, we have to understand why and perhaps apply that lesson to ourselves.
Yeah.
So, this book, I really wanted to make Sita central,
Right.
to show her in all her diversity, her dignity, her complexity, but also in her weaknesses. She gets upset with Ram, she gets upset with Lakshman. The scene where Lakshman doesn't want to leave her to go looking for Ram in the forest.
Right.
I mean, she really says some bad
Puts her
things.
foot down. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's the other thing I wanted to show, that a woman doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
No one should put on women this burden of being perfect, because that's just not our human condition.
Yeah.
And I also believed right from the beginning, that was my project too, that in order to show Sita in her amazing human glory, I don't need to put down Ram.
Sure.
That's not necessary.
Sure.
That is my understanding of a way in which feminism can be more powerful and more helpful in society. We center the woman's story, we show her greatness, we show her challenges. We don't have to demonize anyone to do that.
Right.
She is an entity in herself.
Right. So you've had such an illustrious journey, so many books, so many writings. Which book remains closest to your heart, and why?
I think I'll have to say two, and they are The Palace of Illusions and The Forest of Enchantments.
Okay.
I see them as my most important projects, right? I wanted that our great epics should be as relevant to young people today as possible. And, I especially have a dear place in my heart for women readers. So I wanted our women and girls to relate to these great texts and the great women who are in them.
Yeah.
And I feel, in my small way, the books have many imperfections, obviously.
Sure.
But I feel that I have created something that I feel thankful that I can pass on to people.
Right.
And so many young women have come to me and said, I never read the Mahabharata before I read Palace of Illusions. I was not interested. I did not want to read the Ramayana before I read Forest of Enchantments. But now I'm interested in going back and reading the originals so that I can compare the texts and think about the issues.
Right.
And that makes me really happy, because the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are treasures of our culture and world culture. And if I can make them accessible through these books and focus on women, the wonderful women that are in them, that are largely misinterpreted or sometimes forgotten or discounted, then I feel maybe I've done something by God's grace that's worth passing on.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you so much, Auntie. Thank you so much for taking out
Thank
time.
you,
Really appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure talking
Thank
to
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Ram doesn't ask for Agni Pariksha. In fact, he is with great pain, but he has decided he's done with Sita.
Right.
He tells her, you can go where you want. I will live my life on my own terms. If you've decided you want nothing to do with me, you have no right to tell me how to live my life after that. And I will end it here honorably in the fire.